And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food and that it was pleasant to the eyes and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. Oh yes, and women share food. That's a very strange thing, because most creatures don't do that, right? Most animals don't share food. Like if you're a wolf and you bring down something in a hunt, you eat your fill. The dominant creatures eat their fill, and then if there's some left over, the subordinates get to eat too. But that isn't how human beings work. We share food. Now you can imagine how that evolved, because lots of female creatures share food with their offspring. Okay, you don't need much of a twist in that from an evolutionary perspective till you start to share food not only with your offspring, say, but with your mate. And that's another way that you entice a mate. It's like, we're going to be better together than alone. Well, that's the offering of the fruit. Well, what's the self-conscious part? Well, here's part of the bargain, you know. I'm going to wake you up. And partly I'm going to wake you up because you need to be woken up, because I have this infant that needs some damn care. And so you bloody well better be awake. And part of the bargain is I'll offer you something. I'll offer you some food. And in response, we're going to make a team. And that's the deal. Well, and that's the human deal. And that's why we're more or less monogamous, by why we more or less pair bond, and why something approximating marriage is a human universal. It's cross-cultural. Now you can find exceptions, but who the hell cares? The vast, really man, who cares? You look at the vast pattern. The vast pattern, well, and the price we pay for having large brains is that we're very dependent, and it takes a long time for us to get programmed, and because of that we need relatively stable family bonding, and that's basically what we've evolved. And you know, you don't get that without making men self-conscious, because male creatures, why not impregnate and run? I mean, why the hell not? And that's something to really, no kidding, like that's the thing to think about. It is not why men abandon their children, that's the mystery. It's why any men ever stick with them. That's the mystery. Because you just have to look at the animal kingdom. And like the simplest and easiest thing is always the most likely thing to occur. So it's the exception, the long-term commitment, that needs explanation. She took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. And the eyes of both of them were opened, implying that before that they were closed. And they knew they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. So that's so interesting. So their eyes are open, which indicates that they weren't to begin with. So whatever God created to begin with was kind of blind. But not blind in some strange way, because they weren't obviously wandering around in the garden bumping into trees. It was some sort of metaphysical blindness that's been removed by whatever has just happened. And whatever's just happened also made them realize that they were naked. Okay, so what sort of eye-opening is that? Well, what does it mean to realize that you're naked? It means to realize that you're vulnerable. That's what people discovered. It's like, oh, we can be hurt. So you're a zebra in a herd of zebras, and there's a bunch of lions around there laying on the grass. You don't care. Those are laying down lions. Laying down lions are no problem. It's standing up hunting lions that are the problem. You're not smart enough to figure out that laying down lions turn into standing up hunting lions. So you're not like building a fort to keep the lions out. You're just mindlessly eating grass. You're not very awake. But that's not what happens to human beings, is they wake up and they think, we're vulnerable permanently. It's never going away, right? It's the recognition of that eternal vulnerability. And what happens? The first thing they do is clothe themselves. Well, what happens when you're naked, when you need protection from the world? Well, obviously, look, you're all wearing clothes, you know? Why? Well, we've been doing that for a very, very long period of time. It's tens of thousands of years at minimum. In fact, you can track more or less when clothing developed, because you can do DNA testing of the kind of lice that cling to clothes rather than hair. And so we have a pretty good idea of when clothing emerged, and of different types as well. So that's quite cool. But the point is, they're naked and they think, that's not so good. We're vulnerable. So their eyes were open enough so they become self-conscious, and they recognize their own vulnerability. And the first thing they do is the first step of culture is to protect themselves with something from the world. And you protect yourself from the world and from the prying eyes of other people. This is the book by Lynn Isbell, Why We See So Well. From the temptation of Eve to the venomous murder of the mighty Thor, the serpent appears throughout time and culture as a figure of mischief and misery. The worldwide prominence of snakes in religion, myth, and folklore underscores our deep connection to the serpent. But why, when so few of us have first-hand experience? The surprising answer this book suggests lies in the singular effect of snakes on primate evolution. Predation pressure from snakes, Lynn Isbell tells us, is ultimately responsible for the superior vision and large brains of primates and for a critical aspect of human evolution. That was tested recently. Psychologists have known for a long time that people can learn fear to snakes, but they discovered in primates recently a set of neurons, pulvinar neurons, which are specialized, that's in old perceptual systems, reveal neurobiological evidence of past selection for rapid detections of snakes. So that's from 2013. So the snake definitely woke us up. Color vision as an adaptation to fruit eating in primates. It's not by accident that women make themselves look like ripe fruit in order to be attractive to men, right? And that's also not socio-cultural in origin. So, and they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God amongst the trees of the garden. That's interesting. So what's the implication? Prior to being woken up, prior to recognizing nakedness and vulnerability, there was no reason for man and woman to hide from God. Now are they hiding from God? Well, they're naked. They're vulnerable. Okay, so think about this. Think about this. It's like, imagine that you have the capacity to live truthfully and courageously and forthrightly. Just imagine that. And then imagine why you might not do that. And then imagine, well, how about fear and shame? How would that work? Well, let's say that the idea of living forthrightly and truthfully and courageously is analogous, given what we already know about these stories, to walking with God in the garden. Well, what stops people from doing that? What stops people from hiding? Well, it's a recognition of their own inadequacy. They look at themselves and they think, how in the world is a creature such as I supposed to live properly in this world with everything that's wrong with me? And so what do you hide from? Well, you go home, you sit on your bed for 5 minutes and ask yourself, what have you hidden from in your life? Man, you'll have books of knowledge reveal themselves to you in your imagination, right? You say, well, why are you hiding? Well, it's no bloody wonder you're hiding. It's no wonder that people hide. That's the thing that's so terrifying about this story. We woke up and we thought, oh my God, look at this place. Like, this is seriously, there's some serious trouble here, and we're in some serious trouble, and we're not what we could be. And so we hide. And that's what the story says. People woke up, they became self-conscious, they recognized their own vulnerability, and that made them hide from manifesting their divine destiny. It's like, yeah, that's exactly right. And the Lord God, I love this part of the story, and that's so funny. And the Lord God called, and we could use a little humor at this point. And the Lord God called unto Adam and said unto him, where art thou? And Adam said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked. So in case there was any doubt about that, that's why. And I hid myself. And God said, who told you that you were naked? Did you eat of the tree whereof I commanded you that you should not eat? And this is where Adam shows himself in all his post-fall heroic glory. And the man said, the woman. Whom thou gavest to be with me. She gave me of the tree and I did eat. So that's such, man, that's such, that it's so, you know, again, there's a modern feminist interpretation of the story of Adam and Eve that makes the claim that Eve was portrayed as the universal bad guy of humanity for disobeying God and eating the apple. It's like, fair enough, you know, looks like she slipped up. And then she tempted her husband, and, you know, that makes her even worse, although he was foolish enough to immediately eat, so it just means she was a little more courageous than him, and got there first. But it's Adam who comes across as really one sad creature in this story, as far as I'm concerned. Look at what he manages in one sentence. It's like, first of all, it wasn't him, it was the woman. And second, he even blames God. It's like, it wasn't just the woman, it was that woman. And you gave her to me. And she gave me of the tree and I did eat. It's like, so, hey, Adam's all innocent, except now he's, not only is he naked and disobedient and cowardly and ashamed, he's also snivelly, backbiting, think. He rats her out like the second he gets the opportunity, and then he blames God. It's like, and that's exactly